Hello everyone, and welcome to this video. If you haven't already, subscribe to improve your chess now, as it'll help you improve your chess. Don't forget to leave this video a like as well. Alright guys, let's get into the video. Today I'm going to be talking about a game played between Anish Giri with the white pieces against Fabiano Caruana with the black pieces in the 5th round of the candidate tournament. Anish Giri began with d4, Fabiano Caruana played d5, c4, and Fabiano Caruana played c6. This is a very brave decision by him, because a few days prior to this, he lost a devastating game to Ding Liren in the Slav defense. However, he's professional and doesn't let this loss discourage him from playing the opening. He might also have used the cookie jar method, it's called, when he thinks about the games he's won with this opening, and this gives him the courage to play it even though he lost the last game he played the Slav in very badly. Knight f3 was played in the game, knight f6, and here Anish Giri played e3, not going for knight c3 as Ding did. Fabiano Caruana went bishop f5, knight c3, e6, knight h4, trying to win the bishop pair, but before black gives the bishop pair to white, Fabiano Caruana went for an interesting variation, bishop f4, e4, f3, and now bishop g6. We can see that the move f3 is very double-edged. It can help white play e4 at some point and get a lot of central control, but on the other hand, it could also be a serious weakness. And here, Anish Giri went for the rarely played bishop d2, more common is queen b3. And here, after knight b7, white is better after pawn takes d5. This is an important detail, as after bishop d2, very many players have fallen into a small trap, you may say, and played knight bd7 here. And then white can play queen b3, transposing to queen c7, but black also has the choice of rook b8 here, as the knight has moved and given this square for the rook. This is maybe what Anish Giri was hoping for. However, Fabiano Caruana blitzed out bishop e7, and Anish Giri took the bishop on g6 and played queen c2 instead of going to b3, which is more common. Knight bd7 was played in the game. Anish Giri castled queenside. If you want to, you can stop the video and find the interesting move that Fabiano Caruana played in this position. Alright, Fabiano Caruana played knight b6, putting pressure on c4. So white has to do something about this, or else black grabs the pawn. Pawn takes d5, pawn takes pawn takes d5 doesn't give white anything. So Anish Giri went for the ambitious c5. But after knight bd7, we can see that black has two pawn breaks, both b6 and the move e5. I had a similar structure in one of my games, which I actually posted on my YouTube channel against a very strong Indian international master. I'll have a link to that video in the description. White may want to play e4 at some point. Anish Giri played king b1, a typical move. The king is a bit safer here, not being on the same file as the queen, when the c file might open. Fabiano Caruana played a strange looking queen b8. Queen c7 seems more natural. b6 right away is also a decent option, but going for the other pawn break with e5 is maybe not so good, because it's not exactly clear what black wants to play next. Black doesn't really want to take on d4. The game saw queen b8, h4, defending the pawn on h2. And b6 would have been a logical move, going for a typical pawn break in such positions, but instead Fabiano Caruana went for a rather strange plan with the move g5. And here Anish Giri had e4, sacrificing a pawn, slightly better than what he did, but still it's not that big of a difference. As after rook takes h4, rook takes h4, pawn takes h4, white has e5, with the idea of queen h7, knight g3, bishop d3, threatening quite a few pawns, a knight f5, and then white can take on f5, pawn knight f8, queen takes g7, pawn takes f5. It's clear that black's structure is somewhat ruined, so white is much better. However, the game saw bishop e1, a more logical move protecting the pawn. Fabiano Caruana went for g4, but after e4 it's not clear what he has achieved by pushing his g-pawn. Pawn takes f3, pawn takes f3, b6, executing a typical pawn break in such positions. Pawn takes d5, e takes d, and here c takes b, a takes b. Knight e2, queen a7, putting pressure on a2. It might seem as if white has a very ruined pawn structure with 4 pawn islands, but the bishop pair has a very strong value in these positions, and white has many ideas to improve their pawn structure. We will soon see some of these ideas in the game. b3 was played, protecting the pawn on a2. Knight h5, trying to blockade with the knight. Knight g3, trying to trade off the blockade knight. Often when you have the bishop pair, it's not to your advantage to trade a pair of knights, according to Dorfman in my method. However, here white wants to fight over the blockade square. g6, knight takes h5, rook takes h5, f4. This is one of the typical pawn breaks. White wants to play f5, improve white's structure, and at the same time ruin black's structure. Also open up the position next to black's king, make it even more exposed, and open up for the bishop pair. It becomes apparent that white has an advantage. King f8, a typical move. The king goes away from the e-file and also is on a dark square, which makes sense because black has a dark squared bishop. So black has more control on the dark squares. Bishop e2, rook h8, bishop d3, c5, bishop c3. And here black had an interesting resource. Still white is somewhat better, but it gives black some play. If you want to, you can stop the video and try to find it. Alright, black had knight f6 with the idea to answer f5 with c4, sacrificing a pawn, but after rook c8, putting some pressure on white's pieces. And after bishop b3, pawn takes f5. The idea of knight e4 is what black wants to execute. Still, it's a pretty open position, so white's bishop pair is quite important, giving white an advantage, but it's not so clear. In the game, however, Fabiano Caruana went for something that looks very human, taking on d4, followed by bishop f6, exchanging the bishop pair. If black is able to exchange the dark squared bishop, it's easier for black to control the dark squares, because now white has fewer pieces that can control the dark squares. Let's say both of the minor pieces, black's knight and black's bishop, controls the dark squares. That's 2 pieces. And white only has a dark squared bishop, So that's one piece, because the light squared bishop doesn't control the dark squares. Now, if we trade off the bishops, then black is left with one piece controlling the dark squares, and white with 0 pieces. So an advantage of 1 to 0 is usually more than an advantage of 2 to 1. Bishop takes f6, knight takes f6, f5, opening up the position of black's king. Pawn takes f5, bishop takes f5, b5. And here rook h2 was played, but the computer finds the genius h5 with the idea of h6 and pushing this pawn. And if you try to take this pawn, then it's very clear that white has a very serious attack. Rook h2 was played in the game. Rook h5, rook e2, going to the open e file, d4. Now we can see why it's so important to have dark squared control, because now black finds the idea of knight d5, knight c3, and suddenly black has some counterplay on the dark squares. Rook e5, and somehow after knight g4, rook c5, knight e3, it's very clear that black has play as well. White needs to play rook c8 check because so many pieces are hanging. Rook takes c8, queen takes c8, king e7, rook c1, threatening rook c7. How does black defend against this? Obviously knight d5. And a3 doesn't change the picture, but rook e1 was played in the game. Now black can't step up with the king and has to play knight e3. And then after rook c1, black has to defend against the threat of rook c7, but after knight d5, white has to defend against the threat of knight c3. So that's how the game ended. In a repetition, Fabiano Caruana was completely busted, but somehow his control over the dark squares helped him save a draw in the end. Alright, I hope you enjoyed the video, everyone, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next one.